Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee, we're now in session for City Council Ordinance 23-0381, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. I'm Eric Costello, Councilman from the 11th District, Chair of the committee, joined to my left by Councilwoman Odette Ramos. To my immediate right, Tony Leva, staff to the committee. We have staff here on behalf of Mayor Brandon Scott and Council President Nick Mosby, respectfully. I've said that like 42 times in the last week, so you would think I would come out a little more efficiently. We've also been joined by Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District, esteemed Vice Chair of the committee. We're here for Department of General Services. Director, what I'm going to ask you to do is, well, first off, how many slides do you have? Okay. How much time do you need for your presentation? Ooh. 12. 12. That's like the max. Yep. Well, you do both opening remarks, but what time are we on until 5 or 5:30? Oh, 5:30? All right, 20 minutes. Can we do that? 20 minutes. We're also joined by Councilman Chris Burnett, 8th District, member of the committee. So, Director, what I'm going to ask you to do is first and last name and position title for each of your folks that are sitting up at these chairs that are going to be testifying today, and then jump right into the presentation. On the microphones, you'll see two buttons. One of those looks like a little Lego character with a Wi-Fi symbol. Yep, there you go. Excellent. You're going to press that to turn it on. When you're done speaking, please be sure to turn these off. They're very sensitive. They'll pick up sighing, breathing, etc. Once you get through introducing everyone, folks, when you hear your name, if you could just raise your hand so we know who you are, jump into your presentation, and then we'll take questions from the committee. Director, take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Do I have a clicker to move the presentation? Okay, that's great. So
someone stole the clicker?
It was over there at one point, and now it's...
Does anyone have a clicker on their desk? There we go.
The clicker.
Oh, there you go.
All right. That's great.
Outstanding. All right, take it away.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and invaluable members of the council. My name is Berke Atilla. I am the Director of Department of General Services. Rather than me introducing everyone, I'm going to do a little bit differently, and I'm going to turn over to my right. This is the first person that I'm going to introduce is Matt Rappaport. He's our acting CFO, but then we're going to take turns. Matt, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, Council. Matt Rappaport, acting CFO.
Terrell Cheston, Deputy Director.
Catherine Burns, Chief of HR.
Frank Forka, Chief of Office of Performance Management.
Good afternoon, Abrar Bukhtir, Acting Chief of the Fleet Management Division.
Mohammed Abdul Latif, Acting Chief of Facility Management.
Julia Kalaz, Division Chief Energy.
Chris Hepler, Deputy Chief, Capital Projects.
Annie Follis, Executive Administrative Manager.
Well, that concludes our executive leadership today, but I have other panel members joined me today, and they're subject matter experts. If and when needed, they will come up to the podium and introduce themselves. So let me start. Well, first of all, thank you. Okay, I need to get this closer to me. Find a way. All right, maybe this is it. Can you all hear me well? All right, so again, thank you everyone for having us today. At DGS, we believe in our power of data. It guides us on everyday decisions, from ensuring our city vehicles spend less time in the garage and more time on the road, to figuring out the best places to implement energy-saving measures, or where to spend our limited capital funds. We are also looking to the future and preparing for changes as they come. We're putting the finishing touches on a first-ever new strategic plan for our department, which we believe will lead us to new heights of efficiency and alignment across our organization. Our teams have showcased immense creativity in their work this year. A shining example of this is the fantastic joint effort between our HR and fleet divisions, including other agency partners like DPW, DOT, and DHR. This partnership has produced an innovative program offering a CDL bonus and addition tool allowance program for our trade and trade-level folks. We believe this initiative will significantly enhance our ability to retain and recruit high-quality talent, further strengthening our department's effectiveness. Looking ahead, we are excited about our upcoming projects. One of our big ones is planning for a greener future with a 5-year transition to zero emission on our administrative fleet. We are also looking closely at how we can get the best use out of our facilities without stretching our resources too thin. In a nutshell, DGS is all about making things work better, smarter, and more efficiently for the city of Baltimore. Every day, we are improving our processes and services and always keeping our sight set on our mission to help our partners deliver the best for Baltimore City residents. So here's to a successful fiscal 24 and beyond. We thank you for your continued support. So that's the shortest version of the opening remarks. I'm sure my communications director, John Riggins, is not going to be happy because I really cut it, but I thought that you might need the time. So
well, thank
apologies.
Well, thank you for that, but I also want to mention that Deputy Director Terrell Chesson has been very helpful in some issues ahead of my district. I want to thank him for his leadership. Appreciate it.
We really appreciate the recognition. Okay, so jumping in our slides, let me see if the thing is working. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So I'm not going to read you the agency's mission. I think just like I want to be a little bit more clear about what we're trying to do. As I said, our mission is and vision. We're looking at our strategic plan, and we're hoping that it will be aligned with our core values, that we're updating our vision and mission. But at the end of the day, we're here to deliver great service with the DGS. Our goals in FY24 is obviously to support the council and the mayor's action plan. One important thing for us to understand that with the new world, the way we work and how we work and where we work, we need to optimize our facilities portfolio, definitely by reducing the underutilized facilities and especially the surplus buildings that we have, including the surplus schools. Energy initiative is great importance to us. I would like to also reiterate after my arrival, we have elevated Julia Kalos's Office of Energy from being part of the Capital Division, because the role of energy is not capital projects and electrification of or retrofitting equipment, but rather procurement strategies, hedging strategies, zero emission vehicle transformation. So I'm very proud to announce that we have our own standalone office called the Energy Office, and Ms. Kalos is our chief. So she's doing a great job, and one of the things that we're working on is advancing the Baltimore Energy Data Initiative. We call it BEDI, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more when I'm going through each division slides. We are beginning the transition to zero-emission vehicles and the infrastructure that is needed to support those assets. We are enhancing DGS's role in capital improvement planning process. We wanted to be a little bit more involved in the front end, working with the departments, our sister agencies that we manage their capital plan. We work with them into twofold. We have the quantitative data. We know their assets. We know the conditions of their assets. But when it comes down to prioritization of which projects need to go, we don't make these decisions in vacuum. We work with them. But what we're trying to do is enhancing our role in that engagement at an earlier stage to allow more time for back and forth to ensure that the limited dollars that we have is going towards what is needed. And very important thing for us right now is increasing the hiring in divisions where need is critical. You all been hearing about the staffing challenges in every other department, and DGS is no different. Thank you. If you could move to the next slide. Oh, okay. So here's our org chart. We have 5 divisions: administrative division, where the department director's office, fiscal office, HR, DER coordination, strategic and transformation team, as well as our performance management team sits. Then we have our largest unit, which is fleet management. We have our facilities management and maintenance program. We have our capital projects, design and construction, and as I said, newly formed public and private energy performance office. So going into fleet management, you all know that we are a large operations. Our budget is $71+ million, and entirety of this budget is what we consider an internal service fund. We run like an enterprise where we create work orders, we build the agencies, and we charge back for the work that we provide for them, which then becomes our revenue source to run our operations. And it is a zero-sum nonprofit operations. I need to mention that as well. And one big item about the fleet management is that our annual investment in cities' fleet through our master lease program, where we borrow funds to purchase assets, has gone up from $26 million to $35 million. That represents about a 40% increase in our capacity to be able to purchase more assets. So that is a really good news. In addition to the increased funding, we're collaborating with the Department of Finance to find ways to be able to utilize multi-year contracts better. Why that matters? Because when you can do multi-year contracts, number one, you can take economies of scale to your advantage, because rather than ordering assets on a yearly basis, you could order in bulk. Rather than ordering 4 assets every year, you can order 20 all at once, spanning over multiple years, which allows us to be able to lock down prices and get better discounts. But on the other side, multi-year contracts allow us to be able to cut the internal processes that allow us to be able to place these orders. So not only if we can completely become successful in this effort, we're going to have benefits on both ends. We're going to get the assets cheaper, but we're going to get them faster. In our recommended budget, our contractual services to support an additional 14 positions and 11 laborers. We have other positions there. The idea of creating additional labor positions is to be able to take the work that we rely on third-party vendors and then bring more work in-house by creating our own positions. I do want to iterate the fact that the creation of these positions are not in addition, but rather reduction of the dollar amounts that are being spent with the vendors and redirecting them to those positions that we hope to hire. And what are we doing to hire? Because I know that you're going to ask that you have all these vacant positions. What makes you think that you're going to be able to hire these new positions? Well, we've done some, and we're doing more. Obviously, creating a CDL bonus program was quite helpful in terms of attracting new talent. In the fleet environment, it's very interesting that if you're a new mechanic, you're trying to find a job, you have to come to the shop with your own tools. Nobody gives you tools. And if you don't have tools, then you can't work. And the starting salaries are low. And if you're a starting mechanic, it is going to be hard for you to be able to dedicate dollars that are already not enough to be able to buy the new tools. And then the tool demand is increasing because we have new assets on the ground. We have hybrid assets. We have electric assets coming up. So it's the demand for everyone, new or old. So what we're proud to announce that we have introduced a tool allowance program that we give our mechanics, whoever needs tools, a dollar value of $2,000, thank you, Chief Burns, $2,000 to help. Is it enough to buy a full toolbox? Absolutely not, but it is definitely an attraction and a retention tool for us. Moving on, Administration, that's where most of the soft work is happening. We are a support service to our operating divisions. That's where the director's office is. We have a strong fiscal shop. If we didn't have a strong fiscal shop, I didn't think that the budget director, Larson, would have poached Mr. Brosh to be her deputy. So we're sad and happy at the same time by losing him to BBMR. Okay. He doesn't want to go to, okay, there we go. So the public and private energy performance group, this group is really doing an incredibly important job that DGS is very proud to take on. One of the things that we're doing is we're taking the entirety of the management and the billing, not necessarily processing of the bills of the energy bills that the city gets. Why that is important? We wanted to centralize that because we do believe that it is not fair for an accounting clerk sitting in finance department, understanding a bill in front of them. A, it is accurate. B, is it the right account number? C, is it the right commodity being charged to them? Are we capturing the renewable credits that we need to get? Is this an account number was supposed to be closed? Or is this an account number that doesn't belong to us? Is this an account number that somebody else needs to pay? We realized that in the previous way of managing that was open to possible mistakes and errors, and our office has taken a leadership to take this massive operations under DGS. We're very proud to announce that that has been approved, and it's been in working progress. There are a few other things, actually, I would like to mention about the energy. Outside of the billing management, we also launched the Baltimore Energy Data Initiative, which is a refresh for the city's strategy for building accountability for performance and goals. This is something that we have never done in the past. We're going to be able to benchmark ourselves to other jurisdictions, private and public, to see how our buildings are doing. That will then, in return, allow us to be able to make informed decisions where and how we're going to spend our money. We have been securing grants from both MDE and Maryland Energy Administration on funding renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. In the last 5 years, the city has received more than $2 million in grant funding. We have completed lighting, HVAC, and envelope measures for rec centers, Locust Point and Easterwood, and multipurpose centers, Northwest CAC and Govans, and then we have done some of these improvements in Benton as well. We have completed assessments of 13 roofs for solar panels for potential from the state-supported technical assistance, as well as awarded about $800,000 in new grant funds for energy efficiency and electric vehicle charger projects for FY2024. Within that, I also would like to mention that working closely with the fleet department, we're actively transitioning to hybrid and electric vehicles. The city currently has about 168 hybrid vehicles in service, most of them which is with Baltimore Police Department. These hybrid vehicles alone are responsible for a 40% reduction in fuel consumption, as well as 60% reduction in maintenance costs. Also, an important fact that we are working, Fleet Department and the Energy Office working together on the ZEV transition plan. What is quite important to us is when we know a sedan is due for replacement, there's one way to hit the numbers early on, replace all of those sedans. If there is an equivalency in the market, give them a ZEV. However, we realize that the asset is only a smaller part of the game. We need to have the infrastructure built to be able to charge those. So we're taking a step back to leap forward to understand where we can influence much larger scale, where we have operations that are heavily relying on these assets, where they park together, so that we can invest on the infrastructure. And we want to understand the driving limitations so we don't give them an asset that may leave them hanging. And this is the study that we're going to be embarking right now. The RFP is out or about to be out on the street. We're going to, throughout the summer, we're going to be working on this and hoping to inform the next year's budget where the infrastructure and then the next level of ZEV assets come in. And this wouldn't have been possible if the Energy Office and Fleet were working together. Moving on. Facilities management. This is a tough place to be, and I appreciate my team here because they are trying to keep the buildings up and running and responding to all of the concerns and the complaints that are coming from our tenants. And then we are also tenants of our own buildings as well, so we live and breathe the problems that everybody has. But within that, what we're trying to do is, back in the day, long time ago, around 2011, right after the onset of the crisis, the DGS has lost a lot of people, rightfully so, for the budget cuts. And that created a coverage issue for us to be able to have people in those buildings to be able to proactively survey, respond to those issues, rather than waiting for someone to tell us something has been broken. So our budget this year before you tries to attempt to get us that bridge closed up a little bit. We also working with the surplus school systems, that the city gets the surplus schools, and if it's not assigned to an outside party, HCD gives that school to us, and Council Member Ramos knows exactly what some of those challenges could be. We work very hard, and some failed and some successful. But what we're trying to do is getting more money to be able to do better with them when we have them. We're like a foster parent to those schools, but we just do not know how long that we will be foster parenting those schools, and it's very challenging. And the schools come at you a lot faster than you can get rid of them, so that creates a budgetary challenge, but we're very appreciative that the extra dollars that the BBMR has granted us to be able to do better for that. So we understand that it is hard to get everything that is needed, but I can't thank enough that we've been heard, and then they're trying to give us more for that. Capital projects and division. This is the bread and butter of the deferred maintenance backlog. This is where we work together with facilities. But since 2014, what the city has done, in my opinion, has positioned the capital projects division on capital decision-making in a very good spot. I know you've heard Director Ryer when he was presenting the capital budget, not his planning, but the capital budget. He mentioned that the DGS is one of the better agencies in terms of knowing the assets condition, and that is not sheer luck. We've been very due diligent in terms of doing assessment on our buildings and understanding their conditions, but we have been doing one thing very different than others, that when we do the assessment, we don't get a binder. We use a software that's kept those assessments live that allows us to be able to then look at what's aging and what is needed, and then constantly shuffle and prioritize backlog, pairing with the agency needs as well as our maintenance division for the facilities come together and prioritize where those dollars needs to go. We have seen an increase, and I'm again very thankful for all the dollars that have been granted for capital projects division to do more. We have gotten ARPA funds. We have gotten surplus dollars assigned to us from the FY2022 to do many needed upgrades, and as well as increased capital funding. However, some good news about that brings additional challenges for us to be able to staff up to be effectively maintain these projects, to start them on time, manage them appropriately. When I say managing them appropriately, I'm talking about the vendors being paid on time. I'm talking about subs being paid on time. So project management is not just the getting the library built up, but everything else around it. So we have in this budget a few positions that we're hoping to add to deal with those. But I do also want to footnote that these positions will have almost $0 impact to general fund, because the positions are recapped. It's a term where we capture the salaries of those project managers into the capital project. So since we have the dollars, we just need to add the positions to support those. Okay. I think that concludes my slides. I don't know how I did on time, but I was trying to be mindful.
You were very punctual, Director. Thank you. We've been joined by Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, Councilman Chris Burnett, 8th District, member of the committee, Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you for your efforts on, Lake Clifton. Obviously, we learned a lot.
We did.
But I did notice that the increase for schools is only like less than $500,000. That doesn't seem like it's enough.
Well, it is not enough, but it is an impossible number to really budget for that. So we're hoping to not necessarily increase the dollars that we need to maintain those, but rather trying to figure out a way to dispose them faster so we don't really rely on heavy funding. $500,000 will do a lot. Number one, our biggest problem has been properly securing these places
Right.
without having to rely on boots on the ground, police presence, or additional security. So with these $500,000 increase, we would be able to add more buildings to our new system, doors and windows guard systems and cameras, almost like a monitored security system with a third-party vendor. That will be a huge increase. As I said, yes, it is not enough to be able to do everything that we want to do, but we're very happy to be able to deploy this newer technology where camera is going to be watching, and people, if they see an activity, they will then inform a security to be dispatched. So we could be a lot more quick and fast in terms of our response. However, I do agree that this is a symptom treatment. The root cause is just either we do not get these schools or we get them in better shape, protect them so that they're not stripped off of material, and when we have them, we find them a better home faster. So.
Yeah, buildings like Lake Clifton, though, were just huge. People were breaking in every single window, which that has hundreds of windows. So we've got to find a way to, make sure that they're secured. I also agree with you that, we shouldn't have as many surplus schools, and obviously we will need to take time to address that issue. And then, of course, the disposition much quicker, but that's through DHCD, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm. We work with them.
Right.
Because we're engaged with potential nonprofits. They're coming to us, so we don't have a procedural role, but we play a role in terms of trying to find matches and making sure that the building is actually somewhat in good shape that people want to come in.
Well, I also think that you could help to push, because I think it is taking way too much time to get, in the case of Lake Clifton, it was the comptroller's office, so I don't know how that all works, but either agency that has these surplus schools, I think it's mostly the comptroller, just to continue to push hard on, the fact that we've got to figure out the best uses for these buildings so that this cost doesn't continue to go up.
Agreed.
And obviously, we have some other issues with Lake Clifton that we don't have to deal with now because it's not ours, but I do think that just understanding this enormous process, and I don't know if any of the other schools are as big as that building was.
I think that's one of the biggest in the eastern,
It
Atlantic
was one of the biggest that's exactly right,
Yeah.
in the whole East Coast, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. So, yeah, but I'm glad that you were able to push for this, continued increase. We have had a conversation about it with the comptroller's office in one of our hearings on, controlling facilities, and we'll just continue to work with you on try to resolve this issue of not just security, but just the buildings in general, and how can we push hard to make sure that we dispose of them properly.
We
Doing one or two
appreciate that.
questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Director, can you talk to me about the plans for fiscal year '24 for renovations of DPW sanitation facilities for employees, specifically bathrooms, showers, lockers, et cetera?
I would love to talk about those plans, but unfortunately, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, DPW sanitation facilities is not in DGS's realm for facilities management. So we could work with them and help them identify vendors, design and construction, but ultimately those facilities, and I do not know why, that it is not in the DGS's portfolio. DOT is not also, Rec and Parks is not. But remaining facilities is DGS's. That is the reality. We're happy to work with DPW to help any shape we can help, because we are the experts in renovating facilities, but we don't have direct oversight.
If it pleases the committee, if I could have my question back? Any objections? Thank you.
Oh, that was an easy one.
Thank you, colleagues. Let's talk about fire facilities then.
Okay.
Can we talk about where we're at and what's planned in this upcoming fiscal year? I want to talk about fleet, just want to talk about, and then I'll come back. I have a specific fleet question, but fire facilities, firehouses.
Of course. I know that we have a lot, not a lot, but a significant amount of monies we have identified for fire facilities, that some of which is state grants that are there. We're working with them to identify which projects are going to go forth. In terms of the specifics of which projects that are active and which projects are being in the planning phase, I would like to defer this to our Deputy Chief Hepler for capital projects.
All right. So there are two $5 million grants for Engine 27 and Engine 14. They're in schematic design phase, both of those. 14 was just declared landmark, so we're going through the rest of that legislation, but that design will begin here shortly. As for the 25 million allocated, there are, let's see, 2 nearing construction, 2 in design, and 7 more behind that, and I can give you particulars on sites if you need that.
Yeah, can you provide that to the committee as a follow-up request? Is that something that you could get to us by this Friday?
I think so.
Outstanding, thank you. Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to you and your team for joining us this afternoon. Can you speak to I know the agency's been working to try and build out, and I don't think you're doing this in isolation, infrastructure for electric vehicles. I think that there's like a partnership with DOT and BG and probably some other partners. Can you speak to where that work currently sits? I was listening to a radio show the other day. It was talking about how there's so much from vehicle manufacturers like really emphasizing electric vehicles, the federal government providing incentives, and as well as cities, that we're sort of heading to a place where there could be some real equity issues as it pertains to access to charging. Because right now, if you even live on where I live at, I have no place to, if I wanted to get an electric vehicle, I could not put a charger station in front of my house, and I don't have a garage, like most folks in the city probably don't. And so it sort of, the topic was sort of focused on like how, unless you have a driveway in the garage, it becomes harder for folks anywhere, really, not just outside of Baltimore, to really get on this wave, which we need to be getting on because of climate change.
Of course.
Can you speak to like how the agency and sort of, I guess, this interagency collaboration is taking that into account?
Of course. Thank you for that question. So we're collaborating, and we have a very defined lanes between DOT and DGS. DOT is the right-of-way infrastructure for the population, the citizens, and external. DGS infrastructure is meant and then produced for what we call the behind the fence, for city operations, for our assets. So, but any kind of infrastructure that we will be collaborating with them. But there is that line of separation between infrastructure built for citizens on the right-of-way, parking authority, and them is DOT. Anything that we need to put for our let's say, permitting operations, HCD folks, we want to give them electrified vehicles. Where would they park is going to be ours. But however, building the infrastructure will require collaboration with BGE, and if and when we're going to bring infrastructure to a facility, we would then need to coordinate with the parking authority and DOT to say, can that be branching out to go in there? So one of the reasons why we decided to not be driven by just the replace old assets if there is a electric vehicle availability outside, is to look into that. We need to take a step back and have a more comprehensive 5-year outlook that could focus our efforts both at the infrastructure build, because to be honest with you, infrastructure is way more expensive on the front end than the asset itself, especially if you like those fast chargers. They could logarithmically can go higher, and the cheaper ones may not be the ones that we need at the speed we would like those assets to come online. So the decision has been made, and our committee will involve working together with not only DOT, but the Parking Authority for those reasons. However, if you have more technical questions, I have my energy team, Julia and Jason actually joined us. We can answer more detailed questions if you want.
No, that's helpful. I should have asked that when we had the DOT hearing, so I'll follow up with them on that as well. I thought that there was a little bit more of a collaborative space, but I forgot about the very defined lanes that most of the agencies work in. So,
yeah, in terms of, as I said, if we're going to put something in front of a library for city residents to use, that would be the DOT. If we're putting a health center for their employees to put, that would be us in our facilities. But again, the collaboration is going to come in if we're working with BGE to bring it there. Then we need to say, just like, okay, if this work is being done, what can you take advantage of? So that's the part that we need to be collaborative with them. You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to tag on to the conversation you had with the councilwoman of the 14th District, Ramos, on security in surplus schools, because as you know, we, in fact, continually have problems with Green Spring, another very big school, and it's still owned by the city because we're still in the people that want to acquire it are still in negotiations that have to go through the Board of Estimates. I've been in that building, and it's just, every time I walk in there and see how they continually take copper and, you try to secure it and they still break through. I just believe that it's professional work.
It is professional.
The whole process of how I've seen it happen year after year after that school being used as a emergency shelter for men, it's just been a terrible problem. So yes, we need to be focusing on those buildings because they're given to us and our assets, and the council members are the ones that get the complaints, and it's just something that we really got to kind of take a hold of. So my question, how do you communicate with the community and get feedback from them about city facilities or city buildings and management? Do you, you're a lot of people in your office, and I thank you for what you all do, but you're not in the communities. The facilities are there, but you're not there day in and day out. How do you engage the community to actually get feedback and ideas?
Well, that's a really great point that you're making. I think DGS can take a more active role, educating the communities about what we can do, what is realistic, timeline or otherwise. We can definitely partner with HCD, who's the lead partner, and then they are in those communities, but I don't think that we are with them. So I hear you. That's something that we could easily be involved, because information is very important. If people can see our position, there's solidarity and empathy. They understand that our challenges, and then they see that we're there to care. We're not hiding behind a fence and it's just like, that's HCD, I hear you. This is something that we could immediately start being more involved whenever there's conversations about either having a surplus school come in or an actual surplus school is being a problem in a neighborhood. We have the right people, we just need to be present. So that's our commitment, to be more present.
Thank you for that. you know, HCD does have opportunities where they participate in fairs and so on. It's just trying to be engaged, and the summer months are really the most popular time to do that, so people understand your department and know exactly what you do and what you stand for, and that outreach really needs to happen, just so they can understand what you all do and why the certain amount of money is coming to your agency and why you're a separate agency from everyone else. The public doesn't really, still don't understand that, so that outreach is very important.
We hear you, and I will take action on that.
Thank you.
Of course.
And we have also been joined by Councilman Conway of the 4th District. And Councilman Conway, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you. I'll start more with a comment. I was really encouraged with your opening comments about the efforts that we're making to electrify the fleet. I never talk into the microphone. To electrify the fleet. Certainly, you're probably very aware, we've had a number of conversations about a piece of legislation that I put forward for the city to move to a fully electric fleet. And I'm glad you guys are taking that work seriously. I'm curious, you know, by way of the increases in funding, how are we thinking about that? How are we thinking about our coming purchases? And how do we make sure that we meet a little bit of what you talked about in your opening, the charging, how do we resolve the charging problem, making sure that our administrative fleet has the ability to charge in all the places where those cars are stored overnight, so on and so forth.
Well, the number one approach that we're gonna do is first the analysis of what needs to be replaced and what is out there to replace them with, and prefer them to be a ZEV asset. So that's the starting point. However, just to simplify, we rather give 2 assets to one location so that we can build one infrastructure rather than giving one asset to Northeast and Northwest, and now we have to spend infrastructure dollar twice. So that came to a really quick understanding when we look at the cost of infrastructure build. We changed who is in the driving seat. We were very focused on just like getting the percentage of assets turned into ZEV to get quick wins, which was what was the initial reaction. But we realized this is rather a long game. So it's better to build the infrastructure so that we could add multiple of assets around it. It may get to that percentage maybe 2-3 years down the road, but if we were to take that approach 10 years, I can guarantee you, Councilman Conway, in 5 years, this approach will get us better numbers. It may look like a slow start, but sometimes we collectively agreed that it is a better way to step back and study for the equity reasons and the dollars that we have. We have been focusing on the replacement of the asset, but we're heavily relying on grants and others to build infrastructure, but there are many other opportunities out there. But I'm hugging this conversation where I have subject matter experts sitting here with me. If I may, I would like to give them the chance to see if they have anything else to add. So, Julia, do you want to add anything? You do not have to, but if you want to.
I don't have much to add. I think it's just reinforcing being strategic and efficient with how we're deploying the charging resources to be matched about how agencies are using their vehicles. So it's serving both their operations and missions, and as well as saving and being responsible with the city's dollars. Thank you.
Excellent. I know we were doing an analysis, one looking at other cities and also looking at our operational needs around exactly this issue. Have we completed that analysis?
We have not completed that analysis fully. We have done a part of the analysis. That's when we start realizing through that analysis that A, we might need to change the game plan. B, if we want that game plan to be very successful, we need to go after with the industry experts. So that's why we have put together that RFP for professional services contract. We're going after the companies who have done this, not in this region, but nationally, and some of them actually globally. So once we have them on our side, they'll be able to really expedite all of these all of these studies for us. We admit that we have the intention, but we do not have the capacity to be able to do at the level, but we're fortunate enough to be able to find monies within our own realm without having to ask for more. We're going to fund that study. And then they could help us also, not just where to build, but how to go after other grants that might be available, because they've done this. Transit-oriented development grant funds that could be just like last mile approach, where you can bring your car and then park it. So there are many other things that we need help from outside to make this a better successful implementation for us.
I appreciate that. I just want to say again, I truly and deeply appreciate your leadership on this. It's one thing for us to debate an idea as a council, but totally different thing for you and the administration to figure out how to get there regardless of where we come out as a council. It really means a lot. And I think we are positioning ourselves to really set a standard for not just Baltimore, but really for the country and for the world. So really, really, really excited about the way we're tackling this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question that we have not started talking about at all, but it came to me the other day after the steam issue that happened downtown. We have been talking about closing the incinerator for years. I have a bill I'm about to introduce around deconstruction to make sure that when we're doing demolitions, that we're recycling most of it to take away about 40% of the waste from the incinerator. The incinerator, however, powers all of the steam that's going through downtown. So has DGS started thinking about the fact that we want to close this incinerator? It will happen, but we need an alternative source for whatever the steam is powering. Has DGS started thinking about that?
Yes, we have. Do we have a solution? No.
Okay.
But yes, we have. One thing that we are in the contract negotiations with Vicinity long-term, and in that long-term conversations, the energy dependency and where that energy comes is at the center of it also. Not just because of the incinerator where the steam is generated, but all of the building energy standards that has come into the state of Maryland, therefore going to be imposed on us. So one of our bigger things, this is again, Energy Office is very helpful, identifying retrofitting opportunities. For example, when where applicable and where we can divert funds, rather than doing likewise replacements for heating and cooling systems, which would rely on steam and chilled water, to be electrified. So how do we do that? Without getting into a situation where we have a purchasing agreement that commits us to purchase a certain, I'm not going to get into term details, without compromising that. So that's definitely an active conversation, again, led by the Energy Office and Ms. Kalas. But at the same time, we're working very closely and understanding where the grants are, and then reducing our capital dollars, the buildings that are due, dollars are available, where we can attract the grant funding, and we could actually free up money because there might be a leaky roof somewhere else that it may not be as sexy to just like, we're just going to electrify this unit. So those are the tough discussions. So in short, yes, this is really in our frontal lobe. We're considering that, and other options might come into play with the state and then the power purchase agreements that is happening in the region, how will impact our ability to make decisions moving forward. So we're trying to be proactive in understanding what those are and how we get ready for them.
That's good that you're thinking about it, because again, we've been super clear that we want to close that thing at some point in time, hopefully in the near future. It is obviously powering up a lot of the buildings, not just city buildings, but other buildings in the area. And at least you're thinking about trying to get not into a contract that, or you're getting into a contract, but that allows you to have hopefully some flexibility, because you know, it's something that's imminent, and so if we end up, you know, reducing the waste as much as we want to, and we want to close the incinerator, we shouldn't be hindered by the fact that it's powering up downtown to close it. You know what I mean?
I do.
So as long as you're having those discussions and everything is coordinated, then I think that that's going to be important. And of course, keeping in touch with the zero waste folks at DPW and the Sustainability Commission is going to be really important to that.
We are actually subcommittee members, right, Julia? And then you're one of the co-chairs, and she's my boss in that committee. I do as she says.
It's great to have those people, absolutely.
Exactly.
Before I go to Councilman Conway, I just want to be, just take a note of, I know what the councilwoman meant. I just want to provide additional articulation. She can disagree if she chooses, but because I represent all of the Downtown Central Business District and what the Downtown Central Business District contributes to the tax base in the city to fund all of these agencies, downtown must remain powered. If we're going to find an alternative, that's great. Happy to be a part of that conversation. But I just want to be careful when we talk about downtown, which is in the 11th district, we're keeping in mind the critical role that it plays in the success of the city. And I assume you meant that. I just want to, I always take the opportunity to point that out during budget hearings because downtown oftentimes, you know, if that, but I know I think we're saying the same thing, right?
Yes, you entered the conversation late, so I was very clear that we needed to find an alternative.
Got it. Thank you.
So it was, you know, really just to try to put top of mind how we do that. And the answer was, yes, they are thinking about it. So.
Got it. And I thank you for your leadership on that, Councilwoman.
And
thank you.
If I could repeat one thing that is also, the pressures is not just that, but the state of Maryland building energy standards are going to force certain buildings, size of buildings, to go through electrification and greener routes. So again,
so there'll be pressures from us trying to do zero waste and close the incinerator, but also these recommendations and, well, demands from the state in terms of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
We actually did submit our comments of the draft regulation as of yesterday, I believe, correct? Again, Julia, if you would like to add anything about the state's regulation on the building energy, feel free to. Don't want to put you on the spot, but you're the expert.
No, thank you, Director. So, I mean, that is one thing that DGS will be working on next year with the Energy Division is how we can help lead city buildings in complying with the Building Energy Performance Standard, which requires benchmarking by 2025 and then increasing reductions to direct emissions at buildings that are over 35,000 square feet, and collaborating with the Office of Sustainability on how we also educate the greater public in our role as on the working group for buildings and energy for the Office of the Sustainability and Resiliency Sub-Cabinet. So we are collaborating with other agencies in that manner.
And if I may add, we understand the value of leading by example as a city. If we're going to dictate certain things for others, I think we need to do the same things for our buildings. Obviously, our ability would be a little bit less flexible compared to the private buildings for them to be able to adapt some of those efficiencies. We're going to be constrained by the funds, but in our prioritization, when we look at which projects needs to be funded, this segment is going to start playing a higher role for when we make those decisions.
Yeah.
Regardless of the source of the energy, where it comes from, chilled water, steam, incinerator, the reality of electrification and the greener sources are there anyways.
Okay, well,
if I could add on, I just want to ask a question. When we're thinking about replacing the energy source, do we know if that's something we can simply do? For instance, if we had clean energy ready right now, is it a plug and play, or does the steam have to be steam in order to heat the buildings downtown? Do we know?
So I know a part of that question, but I think the second part of the question. So it's complex because the downstream of the power generation is one thing, distribution, and then the using is another thing. What we would like to do is we're trying to move away from natural gas-related heating and cooling, using that to greener electrification of the systems. However, I would like to, again, either Jason or Julia to talk about the source of the energy being green and how we can switch that and who would we work with, because even the BGE is in a supplier distributor role rather than a supplier. And I know that on the personal side, you have a choice that you could choose where the power is generated, although if it's still being distributed by the BGE. I do not know, and then we have like agreements with BrickBank and other sources that we procure our things, but the ability to control, I would again turn over to Julia if she can answer. Otherwise, we can provide you a more detailed response.
Thank you, Councilman, for the question. So for our electricity, we comply with the Maryland Renewable Portfolio Standard that has a requirement for how much of our supply has to come from renewable energy as defined in the Maryland statute over time. We do not have currently any externally assigned by other entities goals for going beyond that standard. And that's for electricity. When it comes to steam, because you specifically mentioned steam. So in that case where the steam supplies our downtown campus, it would not be easy to just switch over to electricity in a second, because we would have to do a large capital project, or the alternative is working with vicinity or the provider of the steam network in the city to decarbonize their production of steam. So the steam they're producing to us is derived from electricity rather than from either natural gas or the steam generated by the incinerator downtown. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I think that's sort of the nuance that we should definitely keep in the back of our mind when thinking about whenever that change hopefully does happen, because I think we all want to see that happen, that there may be some major capital changes that need to happen in order to retrofit our buildings and even potentially have others downtown retrofit their buildings, or work with vicinity to decarbonize their process so that that doesn't have to happen. They produce clean steam. I just made that up. That meets what we're trying to accomplish here. So just a thought. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just close the loop on this question? Thank you. No, and I appreciate this dialogue because I think, we are now conscious of the fact that we've got to start thinking about this. And Mr. Chair, just for your edification, I started the conversation because I'm going to be introducing a bill to have deconstruction, so it'll remove 40% of the waste from the incinerator, just as a way to start that process of closing the incinerator. But obviously, we have to have a plan for what happens when it closes. And I think that the public comment around the incinerator for so long didn't have this in mind. So I just want to make sure that we're providing you all are already thinking about it, which is great, in terms of how to make sure that, downtown is still powered, period. And it's just a matter of how. No question. So, and then just making sure that, we can't close the incinerator because we still haven't found an alternative is just not going to be a good way to go. So that's all. So I'm glad that we had this discussion. And Mr. Chair, thanks very much.
Thank you. Burnett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had a question about, I know there was a question asked earlier about the fire facilities. Wanted to ask one about the police as well. As you all are, I know that there have been a few stations selected for renovation, but obviously all of them are pretty dated. Can you speak to, I guess, the long-term plan for both police and fire and just sort of the public safety conditions that the conditions that our public safety staff are working in, and what the, I guess, long-term and short-term is on that?
Of course, I can speak at a high level. Again, I will defer to Mr. Hepler for giving you any of the project details if you're interested in what is being worked on and approved. But at a high level, DGS is responsible for doing capital improvement projects for large agencies. All of the downtown campus, health, police, fire. We do work with the libraries, although they manage their projects, but we work with them. So our long-term plan is we know all of these facilities and what is needed today and then what will be needed in the upcoming 6 to 10 years. We could create a schedule for each building, each agency as a campus, to know what is needed, what is critically needed today, what is needed coming down, and critically needed meaning just the elevators and then the bones of the building for the employee safety. What is not problematic but hard for us is, obviously it's not a surprise for anyone that the total value of the deferred maintenance backlog, and for everybody's clarification, that that term gets tossed around sometimes wrongfully. Deferred maintenance is like any system or a component on a building that is due for replacement that hasn't been replaced. That becomes so just like the car, if you have a windshield wiper that you need to replace, you haven't, now it's time, that's part of the deferred maintenance backlog. Elevator needed to be replaced 2 years ago, now the value of that is full replacement is due. So blessing and a curse, once you know what is needed, is traumatic, the numbers. And we try our best to be able to each year produce a 6-year plan of the total value that is given to us by the planning department. This is your allocation, and then we're glad that our allocation has gone up, and then we got monies from ARPA to do projects too. But yet, I want you all to understand just that the total value that we're getting is still gonna be very little compared to the giant of the backlog. So our plan is to always prioritize what is most critical, producing a plan, which I have referred in my earlier remarks to not decide and dictate for the agencies, this is what we're doing, but rather produce a document for them from where we see, data-wise, these are the buildings that we could spend our money this year. Do you concur? Do you have other funds? And then we go work with them. What we're trying to do this year is, streamlining that process and then give it more time to be able to ensure that everything has been considered before we make a decision to improve facility A, not the B and the C. Maybe they're going to be replaced next year. These are very tough decisions that we have to make and live by every year because we know at the end of the day, we're giving presents to some, but not everyone. So on fleet and the facility side. So, but we're very happy to talk about in the details of how we prioritize those projects and then which projects are actually being awarded and it will be in the pipeline. Chris, you comfortable with answering now or would you like to submit that later?
It is a complicated question with a complicated answer. We serve 11 agencies. So those funds are shared amongst all those agencies. So we're trying to go through exhaustive lists in our VFA assessments to select the most critical items that we can find, and those float to the top. We share that with BPD, and we create that partnership on selecting which ones are the most critical, and that's what we prioritize, using those shared funds. So it is limited. I can give you a list of what's on deck currently. It's a little more detailed.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, Mr. Chair, as a request for the committee to provide, a list of the current projects and, ones underway or that will be underway. Okay. As a quick follow-up to that, Mr. Chair, because obviously I know some of these delays are driven by the inflation. And I noticed in the budget book, there were some reference to that around cost overruns. And I would imagine 2 years ago, peak COVID, that the number was well over 30%, or was that, I think around 30% or so that ran over. And there were no actuals for 22, but just thinking through, generally speaking, how has the inflationary crisis, for supplies, materials, impacted the agency, and how are you planning, contingencies for moving forward to be able to complete these projects? What adjustments are being made given the current fiscal situation in the country?
Chris, do you feel comfortable answering that? Because you had answered that question in the past many times.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Yes, it is a moving target constantly that we're fighting that battle almost daily. We receive bids from contractors, then they're sometimes double, what we even, imagine it being. And we're already inflating our internal costs to try to meet that. So some of the 24 ask were backfill to actually get these projects from going, stopping them from going on the shelf so we can get them done and get them out the door and move on to our next priority. So we're constantly reprioritizing and trying to think out of the box on where to spend our funds and the best way to do that. So I wish it were an easier answer, but it is a very complicated situation.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Director of Fire Boats, we have 3 in our fleet, as I understand it. Please correct me when I don't get correct. The 2 small boats were procured in circa 2003. Those boats take about 2 years to order a new one. They are beyond their current life cycle, and they cost in the neighborhood of $800,000 to $900,000 apiece. We also have 1 large boat. That boat costs about $15 million to replace. It is nearing the end of its life cycle, and that takes about 2 years to order. My understanding is that the 2 small boats have corroded metal on them and are a safety hazard for the men and women that use them. Please share with me what the plans are moving forward for replacement of the fleet. And one last thing, as I understand it, our maintenance costs for the large boat are somewhere in the neighborhood of approximately $1 million per year.
I would need to confirm that. We can get back to you on it. Abrar, I'm going to take the first cut on this one, and I'm going to turn it over to you. So the larger boat, $15 million, we need to work with fire department and then work with the grants to be able to purchase it. It's going to be really tough for us to be able to spend 15 out of our $35 million annual replacement. Will be a tough choice to be able to say no all of the other assets that we might need to go. So that size of a replacement needs to go with an own, maybe borrowing or a different schedule. So that's something that I will be involved in figuring out for the FY25 plan. We need to work with them. In terms of the 2 smaller boats and the maintenance and how much time they spend in the shop or our vendors, I would like to turn it over to our acting chief, Abrar.
Thank you. So we actually have one of the smaller boats on order now. We expect to receive it in maybe 16 months. We placed the order last year, late last year. And as far as maintenance cost goes, we can provide that to them in a week for the larger boat, but also the 2 smaller boats.
Thank you. What was the cost of the smaller boat?
$852,000.
Wow, 800 to 900. That was pretty close. It was off by like $2,000.
Yep.
What is the plan for? Appreciate the plan on the 15 million. Makes sense. That's a massive capital cost. We need support for that. On the second smaller boat replacement, my understanding is that the 2 boats can serve a similar function to the large boat in terms of volume of water that they can push out. Forgive me for not knowing the technical term here. What's the plan for the second small boat replacement, if any?
I apologize. So we have yet to discuss the second boat with the fire department as of today.
When can we convene that meeting with the fire department to get the ball rolling on this?
We'll schedule something with them this week, and we'll send you an update.
Outstanding. Budget Director Larson, what's your appetite for helping us to find another $852,000, notwithstanding increases in cost, supplies, and labor, to get this second boat programmed in the fiscal 25 plan?
You know, certainly we're here to make solutions to these types of issues. One of the things that I think we would potentially want to explore, I know in my former life with the City of Baltimore, when I was working with the fire department as the analyst, I seem to recall that Baltimore provided regional service with our fire boats. And so I think it might be in the benefit of the city to see sort of what those agreements look like and see if some of the regional partners who benefit from the service would have any appetite or interest to help us make sure that we have, you know, the best equipment for that service.
Great. And I think I was a little bit off on the volume of water that is pumped, again, lacking the technical term. It's about 1,500 gallons per minute for the smaller, 7,500 gallons for the larger, so that would require 5 of the smaller boats, which I'm not suggesting. Okay, so can Nate, as a committee request, if we could get follow-up from DGS by this Friday via email on when that meeting with fire is going to be scheduled. And from the budget director, if we could get a very brief written narrative, like a paragraph or 4 bullet points of what the plan is to coordinate with our sister jurisdictions, along with an associated time frame for how we're going to move forward with that. Great, and can we get that by Friday as well? Thank you. Nate, you got that? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would like
Please.
to also, on the smaller boat, FY25 fiscal year calculations of what needs to be programmed is going to happen during the summer, to be able to present the plan for the budget director for the upcoming fiscal year as the base budget. We will look to see initially if we can find room in the upcoming years. But I would like to be very clear that the decision will be fire departments as to see if their allocation needs to be shifted, but we will work with them. However, the $15 million purchase would be a completely different scenario.
Totally understand and appreciate that. That's reasonable. The budget director, I would be incredibly thrilled to see a budget next year, which includes the second small boat being programmed in it. So if there's a way that we can identify those resources outside of what fire's normal request would be, that would be greatly appreciated. So.
And Councilman Cosell, we have the
Please.
meeting scheduled for 10:30 tomorrow. It's confirmed.
You are very efficient. That's
My team is efficient.
Yes.
That's remarkable. Great. I think that's all I got on fireboats. Appreciate it, everyone. Thank you very much. Council Vice President Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staying on the lines of fleet, and I guess for cars and trucks, in light of the issues that's going on with Hyundai and Kia and the stealing of cars, do you have a problem with, stealing of vehicles? And if you do, how many per year? Or you have a system that you follow that's pretty stringent? If you want to kind of just go through that a little bit.
Thank you. So no, we don't have a problem with, I guess, theft of vehicles. I think over the last 4 years, the only 2 instances where a vehicle was stolen was by employees.
Awesome.
And we've recovered both of those units.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Perfect.
And
Awesome.
we have vehicle tracking system deployed in our assets, so that will allow us to be able to pinpoint, and I mean, unless they strip that piece out. And
Awesome.
employees do know how to do that, but not
Awesome. Knock on wood.
Yeah,
That's,
knock on wood.
stay
Exactly.
that way.
Exactly. Let's not jinx it.
Thank you. Next, Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the budget book, it mentions a grant appropriation under Service 730, Public and Private Energy Performance. There's a grant appropriation within a division to continue to support the Maryland Energy Administration's city building and electric vehicle program. Can you tell me a little bit about the program and sort of what we do, what that goes toward?
Julia?
Julia's happy.
That's why she's the chief.
Yeah. Thanks, Director. Thanks, Councilman. So regularly, our office applies to grants that the Maryland Energy Administration puts out. There's 2 main grants. One of them is the Smart Energy Communities Program. We apply regularly for that. It is for municipalities, for their buildings, and for their fleet. We also apply to the Low and Moderate Income Program to get funds for libraries, community centers, rec centers, so we can allocate the improvement of those facilities for those communities. For FY24, we secured, at this point, $768,000 in new grant programs from the state. Last year, we secured about $800,000, which is part of all of those appropriations as we look to how we implement those funds every year. Thank you.
And is that going toward any particular projects or just broadly that scope of issues that we tend to find?
Several projects. There's some of the funds for the new awards are going to be for libraries. Particularly, we're aligning with some of the ARPA funds that are going to libraries in order to do some additional work while we're doing the HVAC projects. We are looking at some funds for energy projects at fire stations, particularly those stations not being renovated by the capital projects, so we can spread a little bit of that benefit around. As well as some recreation centers. We got some money to help us to put some EV chargers in the ground as we work on this plan and moving forward on that. And I think some other community centers as well. We've received some limited funding.
That's great. And I guess to sort of blow it out a little bit bigger, when we're thinking about building repairs, renovations that don't necessarily require capital budget monies, how are we taking into consideration some of the climate concerns, energy impacts, energy efficiency impacts in those considerations, those investments?
It's true utilization of the data from the boots on the ground facilities management team. We have a robust understanding of what fails, not from anecdotal perspective when Chief Mohammed dispatches his people, but we have a robust work order management system that tells us what systems are failing and how much money we're spending to keep them with Band-Aids. Sometimes we look at the cost. It may not live up to the capital dollars, or the capital dollars have been allocated. But we do have, in our internal service fund, we have allocated what we call an operating capital to deal with those projects when and if they happen, to be able to address them. Unrelated, not an electrification project, but this year we had a massive issue with one of the police headquarters roof leaking over top of the legal folks, and that needed to be replaced, and it elevated to become a capital project that we didn't have the funds allocated. We couldn't wait for this year to get the funding, so we tap into that reserve. That's the point of a condominium reserve that we build into our rent schedule, some reserve to deal with those projects. So when that project and our new member, Jason, is big on this one, is identifying not to do a one-for-one replacement for that asset and then use the electrification. If this is now being replaced, capital or operating, we have that stop. Is there an alternative to actually electrify this at this moment? Great. So that's how we deal with the reactive way of changing things to our benefit, as in addition to the programmed electrification of the units. I'm not sure if I had answered your questions fully.
I think so, yeah. It sounds like we have our capital projects, which we're, of course, baking this stuff in, but when we don't necessarily put it into the capital plan, and there's an emergency that requires that we do make a capital investment pretty quickly, we do consider what the upgrade would look like for energy efficiency, it sounds like.
Correct.
Okay, good.
We do have limited funding, obviously, to be able to deal with those emergencies, so we still have to make, but if it's a true emergency, finance department will allow us to go to deficit for those. There will always be funds for that, but that needs to be a true emergency.
And right before we move to Councilwoman Ramos again, you had mentioned libraries and HVAC, and so does that mean you have a partnership and stay up to date with the Pratt Library and their construction of, the new library that's getting ready to be built and on the grounds of the Rec and Parks? Has there been conversation with them? And then also Forest Park Library is getting ready to have a massive renovation, which they talk about the HVAC. So I'm hoping that those partnerships have, because they're going to be breaking ground soon. Is a comment? Please?
So the Energy Office wouldn't work on a large construction project like that. We work with them on smaller projects, okay. Improvements to how the HVAC system is running, small replacements on issues of more capital nature or collaboration with the libraries. I'd have to defer to the director.
Gotcha.
We work with Heidi's team and Gordon Crabb very closely on, so we're here to consult as always. If they're doing a new build, our Energy Office is available to help design with them. But as Julia mentioned, our ARPA funds for the library was a true collaboration as to which buildings needed to be used those funds. Again, we play a support role, not a true decision maker. We do not say this library, not that library, but we tell the cost of those things. But there is an actually good story to be shared within that, because ARPA funds come with a tight timeline with restrictions when to spend. Most of these projects are actually time-consuming. You need to design. You need to, for example, produce an RFP to hire a design firm. You go through that procurement process, award, you do the design, you finish the design, and then you repeat again just to start the construction. So that is known as the design bid build. So what we understood with working with libraries, especially on the ARPA funds, we said that this might be a great opportunity for DGS to try something new, to go to a design-build process, meaning we'll starting the construction documents where the design is at a certain percentage, which then really increases the pace of delivery of those projects, and it allowed us to be able to stay within the ARPA's restricted time limit. It took a lot of work. We need to understand our charter, the code, and finally, with the great work of Capital Projects Division, we were able to work with the state of Maryland, approved competitive contracts that they do this. And then ARPA projects and HVAC would be the first time we're doing these design-build projects, and hoping to understand and learn more from it to see where other projects might be suitable to this type of delivery that could actually bring the solution to the needed communities a lot faster. But we're not going to try to do these projects when the project is super complex, like building a new library, because we're new in this, and then we want to crawl, walk, run. But I'm very happy to be here to tell you that we have successfully find a way to do that, and we're hoping to see positive results of it.
Thank you for that understanding. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the hearing we had, I guess it was a few months ago, they all run together, about the fire department fleet.
Yes.
You had reported that there were 47 vacancies of mechanics at the time. And obviously that's a big deal, because not only do DGS cares for fire fleet, but all of the rest of the fleet. And that percentage was pretty high in terms of the vacancies. Now, of course, we've had a lot of job fairs recently and all of that, so I'm wondering if you can tell us where we are now.
Yes, I can. I know that the number has down, not to the levels that where we want to be, but there has been really great efforts, and I would really like my chief HR, Ms. Burns, to shine on or her great work on this one. She deserves the credit, as well as the fleet folks, because they've done a lot, boots on the ground, to do that. So it's a good story, but we're not at the end of it yet, but we're making good progress.
Yeah, thank you.
So just in our fleet, our mechanics are 30-some. The dynamic that we're facing right now is that we are at 50% retirement eligible. So as we bring folks in, some of our folks are also retiring.
Yeah.
So we're trying to just right now hold steady. We are working with community organizations to try to find candidates, but these folks are very specialized. This is not just a mechanic that you can find off the street. These are people who do heavy equipment. So the apparatuses that they're working on is very specialized, and to find that specialty is a very unique situation. So Fleet has worked with us in 2 hiring events. Opening their doors to actual Biddle Street was our first one in February, and then we just participated in the citywide event. We are also in the process right now of looking over all of our position descriptions for our team to see if we can't get those PDs more robust, so when we advertise out, we can communicate correctly what our folks are doing. And then we're also will be in a partnership to see with DHR about a compensation study with that. So we're trying unique things to see what we can do for our fleet folks and how to pull them in.
And you had explained a little bit earlier today that one of the things you've been doing is providing a $2,000 bonus so, you know, folks don't have to bring their own tools, which, by the way, I was shocked to know that people have to bring their own tools. Like, that's bananas. The city
It
should
is,
be
it is the
providing them.
industry, though. I just want to be very clear that it is not just the city's posture, but it's the industry, even the private and in other jurisdictions. I agree with you, it is bananas, but I was shocked the same way.
Well,
that
but you're trying to overcome it by providing this bonus so people could buy their tools. Crazy. And that, you're trying to figure out ways to be able to get those specialties. I will put out there again, Madam Chair will, I think, appreciate this, is, going to our CTE schools. I have Mervo in my district. Obviously, my colleague has Edmondson, and they've got engineering, mechanic. There's, we've got to start to build that pipeline, and then, of course, the apprenticeship piece. So can you talk a little bit about how we're actually building the bench for the future?
Yes.
We have
thank you.
anticipated this one, too.
Yeah, we saw this one coming. So yes, we're working directly with Mr. Owens. He's the automotive instructor at Mervo. We're working with Mr. Fleet. Yeah, his name is Mr. Fleet.
That is his name,
Yeah,
yes.
His name is Mr. Fleet, and he's the instructor at Edmondson West Side, and then also Forest Park. Coach Markley is the our point of contact there. So we're trying to reestablish those relationships, but we're seeing that the common theme is folks want to work for the city, just not for the salaries that we're offering.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're at. But the goal is to continue to kind of build on that pipeline from city schools, and that is a priority for us.
Great. I'm so glad that you entered into those
We're very active. We promised last year,
Oh.
so we have been very active. I mean, again, some of the things that we're trying, we are, but not as successful as we wish to be.
Sure.
But there's no lack of trying on our side, and then we continue to be building on that. We're gonna, I think we need to also reach out to our recently departed Jason Cohen went to the Department of Labor for the apprenticeship program with the state. That's
Yes.
something that is in our books, that after the budget
Yes.
season, we're gonna reach out to him. We're working with Mackenzie and her team at MOED and the job fairs. But in addition to that, those are our recruitment efforts. What we have done is also we have identified a dedicated sourcing individual. And the term sourcing in the HR world is pre-recruitment, meaning going in after passive individuals and identify them, and would you like to come work for us? So rather than creating a short list of people to convince them to come and apply. So we have a dedicated person hired just for that. Again, not quite successful as we want to be, but the effort is completely there. The other thing that we're doing is not only focusing on the recruitment, but the retention. And we're very glad to, again, the help that we're getting from former DGS Director Steve Sharkey, now in his new role. He extended his team, performance team, to come work with Fleet dedicated personnel. We've done a very detailed, average 43-minute survey for our Fleet employees, just like, why do you work with us? Why did you stay? Why are you working? Why are you leaving? Salary. So we've gotten a really detailed employee survey. And one of the things that we learned is that the people find out about us is not because they apply to positions, but word of mouth is the number one thing. So that now tells us just like we need to be better with our current employees so they actually do recommend positions to come and work for the city. So our wonderful employee engagement team and DEI team that we have in our administration, we had a town hall meeting. We do that quarterly with our people, and then they came and talked to us directly, what do they want? One of the things that we're doing right now, trying to make their facilities better for them. So Abrar and his team is working on creating conditions assessment for our team to be able to identify what some of those things that we could, whether that be improving their restrooms, to painting their lunchroom, to improving their lifts, whatever that is. I know that it's going to pay larger dividends if we can go back to our employees, referring other employees back to us. I think that's going to help us with recruitment and the retention at the same time. So we're really approaching this from very different angles and trying to be very creative.
And so I would imagine, though, that this is going to be these jobs are also part of the broader salary study that DHR is doing?
These positions are part of the salary
Okay,
study, yes. They are.
great. great. So we may be able to see an increase, and hopefully that will be helpful as well. Thanks for all your efforts. It's great to see progress since the last time we talked about it.
I just wanted to add to what Chief Burns mentioned. We actually participated in 3 hiring events. We hired 4 individuals from the Hire Up event as well.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So then we're now at like 30, right? We're not
Well,
at,
we hired 4. They weren't necessarily mechanics, but
Sure.
we're taking advantage of all of the opportunities.
Sure, you've got other vacancies within the department, so you're trying to work on all of that.
Thank you.
Would you like to know the exact number of vacancies on the mechanics?
Yes.
I mean, is that something that we can provide right now?
I have it right here.
Okay.
It's
41.
40, and then
40.
3 lead positions.
So we're still kind of high up in that range, but it's not for lack of trying, basically. And it's also part of the retention issue, I meant retirement,
Yeah,
right?
we might be filling positions and losing, so we have a happy day, 35 back to 40. That's why we're looking at why do you
Yeah, that makes
stay
sense.
here, and what can we make sure,
Yeah.
to make sure that you don't leave the city.
Right, perfect, okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate all the follow-up you've done there. Thank you. Of course.
Thank you so much. It's now 5:30, dinner time, and we want to stay on task and appreciate all of the work that all of you do, and thank you. We don't say that enough, but we definitely appreciate everything that you do and the efforts that you put in to really help our city move forward. And you are dismissed.
Thank you so much.